I remember the exact moment my marriage ended. Before the first chapter begins, please like this video and comment where you're watching from. I can't wait to see all the different places represented. Now let's begin. Not the divorce papers, not the court date, not even the argument that finally blew everything open. It was a Tuesday, ordinary, forgettable, and I was standing in the hallway of my own home in a gray t-shirt, holding a brown paper bag with 2 spicy chicken sandwiches from Popeyes because Stacy had texted me that she was hungry. That's who I was. William Dewayne Ellis, 34 years old, project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm in Atlanta, Georgia, bringing my wife lunch in the middle of a workday because I'd driven home on my lunch break just to make sure she was okay. That's the level of man I was. And I heard her laughing before I even opened the door. That bright, musical laugh I'd fallen in love with in 2018 at a rooftop party in Buckhead, the one that made rooms feel warmer. I smiled. I almost knocked. I almost announced myself like I always did, like a considerate man who respected her space. But something made me pause. Maybe it was God. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the fact that deep in my gut, something had been whispering to me for months, and I'd been too tired and too devoted to listen. "Girl, William doesn't even know," Stacy said through the door. Her voice was different now, loose, unguarded, stripped of the soft sweetness she wore around me. "He thinks he's being a husband. He's just being an ATM." Laughter. Multiple women. Her friends. I recognized Tanya's cackle and Brianna's high-pitched squeal. "An ATM with good credit," Tanya said. More laughter. I stood there. The bag of food was warm in my hand. My chest. I can't even properly describe what happened to my chest. It wasn't a sharp pain. It was more like the slow, silent collapse of a building that has been rotting from the inside for years. A structure that looked fine from the outside but had been hollowed out, beam by beam, without anyone noticing. 5 years. I had spent 5 years being Stacy Washington Ellis's husband, provider, supporter, cheerleader, therapist, housekeeper when needed, errand boy, and financial foundation. 5 years of direct deposits split before I even saw them. 5 years of covering the mortgage on our 4-bedroom home in Decatur, the utilities, the groceries, the car note on her Infiniti QX50, her monthly spa membership, her hair appointments every 2 weeks at a salon on Peachtree that charged $300 a session. 5 years of funding a lifestyle for a woman who described me, to her friends, as an ATM. I didn't go inside. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. I placed those 2 chicken sandwiches on the passenger seat where they steamed quietly. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. Something cold and clear moved through me like ice water, and I thought very calmly, this is over, and I am going to be smart about how I end it. But first, I needed to understand the full truth of what I was dealing with. Let me take you back. Let me tell you who Stacy was when I met her, who I thought she was, and the slow, devastating process of discovering who she actually is. I grew up in College Park, the kind of neighborhood where you either get out or you don't. My mother, Claudette Ellis, worked double shifts at Grady Memorial Hospital as a nursing aide for 22 years. She raised me and my sister Tamara on her own after my father, Raymond Ellis, left when I was 9. Claudette Ellis did not play. She made sure I had structure, discipline, and purpose. She used to say, "William, a man who can't protect his peace can't protect anything else." I carried that with me into adulthood. I got my degree from Georgia State. Worked my way up at Whitmore Logistics through sheer consistency. By the time I was 29, I was pulling $87,000 a year and had a credit score that my coworker Jermaine called embarrassingly healthy. I had savings. I had a plan. I was ready to build something real. Then I met Stacy at that Buckhead rooftop in 2018. She was breathtaking. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Dark skin, natural hair pinned up with 2 gold clips, wearing a white sundress that moved when she laughed. She worked in marketing then, or so she told me, at a boutique firm downtown. She was ambitious, funny, quick-witted, and she looked at me like I was exactly what she'd been waiting for. We dated 8 months. Then I proposed on a Saturday morning in Piedmont Park, just us, no performance, because Stacy said she hated public proposals. She said yes. She cried. I cried. We married in October 2019 at a venue that cost me $24,000. I paid for it. Happily. 6 months into the marriage, her marketing job dissolved. The boutique firm closed, she said. I believed her. That was the beginning. And standing in that hallway 5 years later, holding 2 chicken sandwiches, I finally understood. That was never the beginning of bad luck. That was the beginning of the plan. The job dissolution wasn't dramatic. That's what made it so easy to swallow. Stacy came home one evening in April 2020, 4 months into COVID lockdowns, which gave the whole thing a convenient backdrop, and she sat across from me at our kitchen table in the apartment we were renting then on Flat Shoals, and she said, very calmly, "Baby, they let the whole creative team go. The firm is shutting down." She had tears in her eyes. Real ones, or so I thought. I reached across the table and held her hands. I said, "We're going to be fine. You take a month to breathe. Then we figure out the next chapter." That month became 3, then 6, then a year. There was always a reason. The job market was tight. She was building a freelance portfolio. She'd had 3 interviews, but no callbacks. She was dealing with anxiety, something she'd never mentioned before we got married, but which became a recurring explanation for why she couldn't push too hard. I suggested therapy. She agreed and went twice, then stopped. I told myself, she's struggling. Be patient. That's what marriage is. Here's what I was actually doing during those years, in concrete, documented terms. Our mortgage on the Decatur house, which we moved into in 2021, was $2,100 a month. Mine, her Infiniti QX50 note, was $547 a month. Mine, groceries averaged $600 to $800 a month. Mine, utilities, streaming subscriptions, her phone bill, mine. The hair salon on Peachtree was $300 every 2 weeks. I did the math once and nearly swallowed my tongue. $7,800 a year on hair. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be controlling. The spa membership at Serenity and Stone in Midtown was $189 a month. She'd convinced me it was essential for her mental health. Her clothing budget, and I never set a cap because I trusted her, averaged somewhere between $400 and $600 a month based on what I could piece together from our joint account statements. I was making $94,000 by 2022 after a promotion. A good salary. A solid salary. But when you carry a household entirely on one income while the other person contributes nothing, good starts to feel like barely. I started skipping lunch to keep the savings account from dipping below a threshold I'd promised myself I'd maintain. My coworker and closest friend, Darnell Patterson, noticed before I did. Darnell was 38, had been married himself, briefly, painfully, and had the kind of quiet, watchful intelligence that came from having been burned. He'd sit across from me in the break room at Whitmore Logistics with his coffee and his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and just look at me sometimes. "You look tired, man," he said one day in March 2023. "Not work tired. The other kind." "I'm good," I said. "When's the last time Stacy worked?" I hesitated. "She's figuring things out." He looked at his coffee. Didn't say anything else. But that look, I still see it. It was the look of a man who knows something you don't and respects you enough not to say it yet. My sister Tamara was less subtle. Tamara Ellis Booker, 2 years older than me, was a high school principal in Marietta and had the same no-nonsense gene our mother ran on. She'd never liked Stacy. Not since the wedding, when Stacy had argued with the caterer about portion sizes in a way Tamara described as unnecessarily nasty. I dismissed it as stress. But in late 2023, Tamara sat down with me at my mother's house in College Park during Sunday dinner, waited until Claudette was in the kitchen, and said quietly, "I need you to look at your bank statements, William. Really look at them." "What are you talking about?" "Stacy was at Lenox Mall last Friday. I saw her. She was with a woman I didn't recognize. She had shopping bags. I counted at least 4. Nordstrom, Saks, Anthropologie." She paused. "You said she had $40 in her personal account." I told Tamara she was imagining things. She wasn't. But I wasn't ready to see it yet. Because there's something about being a man who was raised to provide, who built his entire self-concept around being the kind of man who takes care of his family. When you're that man, admitting that you've been played doesn't just hurt your feelings. It threatens the entire foundation of who you believe yourself to be. So I defended Stacy to Tamara, to Darnell, to myself. Right up until the Tuesday I stood in that hallway and heard her call me an ATM. And even then, even after the cold clarity hit me, I had no idea how deep it went. I had no idea about the credit cards, about Quincy, About the second phone, I was still only seeing the surface of how thoroughly I had been played. I didn't confront her that Tuesday. I walked back inside after sitting in my car for 20 minutes. I put on a normal face. Lord knows I'd had practice. I put the sandwiches on the kitchen counter and said, "Brought you lunch." And Stacy, standing there in silk pajamas at 2 in the afternoon with her phone still warm in her hand, smiled and said, "Baby, you are so sweet." I smiled back, and inside, I was building a case. I'd never been the suspicious type, never gone through anyone's phone, never tracked anyone's location or hired anyone to follow them. That wasn't who I was. But I'd also never had an objective reason to be suspicious before. I'd been feeding myself subjective reasons to stay blind. That night, after Stacy fell asleep, I sat at the desk in our home office and I opened our joint bank account statements going back 18 months. What I found in 3 hours of quiet, methodical review made my hands shake. The account I'd been depositing $3,000 a month into as household expenses, money I transferred to our joint account every month like clockwork, had been consistently drained to near zero by the 20th of every month. I'd assumed bills. What I found instead was a pattern, small to mid-sized withdrawals at ATMs around Atlanta. Venmo transfers of $150, $200, $300 to a name I didn't recognize. The name was listed only as Q. I cross-referenced Stacy's credit card bills. She had one joint card with me, limit $8,000. The balance was $7,400. I'd been paying the minimum for months without looking at the itemized charges. When I pulled the full statement, I found 3 hotel charges in the last 6 months, a restaurant in Midtown I'd never been to with her, 2 weekend charges in Savannah, when she'd told me she was visiting her cousin Renee in Birmingham. I remember staring at the Savannah charges. January 14th to 15th, 2024. I was on a work trip to Dallas that weekend. I'd called her both nights. She'd answered from what I assumed was our bedroom. She was in Savannah. I put the statements in a folder. I closed my laptop. I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I called the one person I trusted completely. Darnell picked up on the second ring despite it being 11:47 p.m. I didn't explain anything on the phone. I just said, "I need to sit with you tomorrow." He said, "I'll be at the Waffle House on Candler Road at 7. Come hungry." I was there at 6:52. I laid everything out on that sticky Waffle House table. Printouts I'd made, a timeline I'd constructed, the hotel names, the Venmo transfers to Q, the Savannah weekend. Darnell listened without interrupting. He ate his scattered smothered covered hash browns. When I finished, he wiped his mouth and said, "Q is a person, William. And those Savannah trips weren't solo." "I know. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." He leaned forward. "Before you do anything, before you say one word to her, you need to secure your money and get a lawyer. In that order. Don't tip your hand." This was wisdom I would not have arrived at on my own. My instinct was to burst through the front door and demand answers. Darnell understood something I was still learning, that when someone has been strategically taking from you, you don't fight emotion with emotion. You fight strategy with strategy. I called an attorney that same morning. Her name was Renata Caldwell, a family law attorney in Buckhead with a reputation for being methodical and unapologetic. I found her through a referral from one of Tamara's colleagues. I told her what I had. She told me what I needed. "Document everything," she said. "Open a personal account at a different bank, not a branch of your current one. Redirect your paycheck deposit there immediately. Do not touch the joint account. Do not empty it. Don't do anything that looks like financial sabotage. Just stop feeding it." I did exactly what she said. I also hired someone Renata referred me to, a licensed private investigator named Calvin Reese. 50-ish, ex-DeKalb County detective, the kind of quiet professional presence that made you feel like everything was under control. I paid him $1,400 up front. Within 9 days, Calvin Reese handed me a manila envelope. Inside, photographs, timestamps, location data, and a name. Quincy Lamar Briggs, 37, personal trainer. Worked at an upscale gym in Sandy Springs. The Venmo Q. The Savannah trips. Every hotel stay. Stacy had been seeing Quincy for at least 14 months. I sat in Calvin's office on a Thursday afternoon and looked at those photographs, and I felt something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel devastation. I felt free. Because now I understood the full picture. I wasn't losing a marriage. I was escaping a con. The private investigator had given me the outline, but it was the second phone that gave me the full story and nearly destroyed me. I found it by accident. Or maybe not entirely by accident. Maybe I was looking, the way you look for something you're terrified to find. It was a Saturday morning in late March. Stacy was at the salon, her regular $300 appointment, and I was in our bedroom, and something made me check between the mattress and the headboard on her side of the bed, a spot she used to keep a journal in back when we first moved in. Old habit of hers. The journal was gone. In its place, a Samsung Galaxy, not her primary iPhone. Prepaid. Unlocked. My hands were ice cold when I turned it on. No passcode. Either she felt completely safe, or she'd forgotten to set one in a hurry. The messages between Stacy and Quincy went back 22 months. I read them for 2 hours, standing in my own bedroom, alone. What I found was not just an affair. It was a conversation, ongoing, detailed, and deliberate, about me. About our life. About the money. Quincy wasn't just a man she was sleeping with. He was a man she'd been strategizing with. There were messages about how long to keep this going. There were messages where Stacy told him she'd already scoped the credit limit on the joint card. There were messages where Quincy asked, "When is he going to catch on?" And Stacy replied, "Baby, William trusts me completely. He's not built to suspect people." And then, the message that stopped my heart. From Quincy, dated 14 months ago, "What about the house? If you leave, what happens to the house?" From Stacy, "In Georgia, anything acquired during the marriage is marital property. I've already talked to someone. If I play this right, I get half." I put the phone down. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just freeloading. She had been calculating an exit strategy. She had been determining how to leave me and take half my house, the house my salary alone had built, when the timing was right. I'd been funding not just her lifestyle, but her plan to eventually destroy me financially. I took photographs of every relevant message with my personal phone. Every single one. Then I put the Samsung back exactly where I'd found it. Then I called Renata Caldwell. "She's been planning this," I said. Renata was quiet for a moment. "Does she know you know?" "No." "Good. Keep it that way. What you found is documentation of financial fraud within the marriage and potential premeditation regarding asset distribution. This changes your case significantly. Don't touch the house. Don't change anything. And get me everything you just told me in writing." "How long do I have to keep pretending?" A pause. "Can you give me 3 more weeks?" 3 more weeks. You want to know what 3 weeks of knowing feels like? It feels like walking through water. It feels like smiling at someone who's been slowly poisoning you. Every morning, Stacy would come downstairs in her silk robe and ask me how I slept. And I would say, "Fine, baby," and pour her coffee, and all I could hear in my head was her voice saying, "He's just an ATM." But Darnell kept me grounded. He'd check in every other day. Short texts, "You good?" And I'd respond, holding. That was our code. It meant, I haven't blown the plan yet. My mother, Claudette, noticed something was wrong at Sunday dinner. She pulled me aside in the kitchen, put her hand on my face the way she had since I was 9 years old, and said, "William, what's happening?" I almost told her. I wanted to collapse into my mother's kitchen and let her fix it the way she fixed everything when I was small. But Renata had said the fewer people who knew, the tighter the case. "I'm working through something, Mama," I said. "I'll tell you soon." She looked at me for a long time. Claudette Ellis had seen enough of life to know when her son was protecting her from the truth. She kissed my forehead and said, "I'm right here when you're ready." Meanwhile, I was doing research. Tamara, who I'd finally looped in, helped me reconstruct Stacy's actual financial history. Before we met, Stacy had 2 credit cards charged off, a landlord judgment in Fulton County from 2016, a pattern of short-term relationships with men who'd later described her, online and public records and community boards Tamara dug up, in terms that made my stomach turn. I hadn't done a background check before marrying her. Not a real one. I was in love. I was also, it turned out, not the first man Stacy Washington had positioned herself beside as a financial strategy. A man named Terrence Powell, now living in Cincinnati, had been with Stacy for 3 years before me. When Tamara found his contact information and called him, he answered, and what he told her in a 30-minute conversation was almost word for word the same story I was living. She'd never worked. He'd paid everything. She'd left when she found someone she thought was richer. If she married the next guy, Terrence told Tamara, God help him, She was already talking to someone when she left me. That someone had been me. Renata told me the papers would be ready to file on a Friday. That gave me the week before to take every step she'd outlined. Monday morning, I walked into a SunTrust branch, not the Wells Fargo we shared, and opened a personal checking account and a personal savings account. I had my HR department reroute my direct deposit that same day, done by noon. Tuesday, I contacted our mortgage servicer and had my name only added as primary contact for all future communications. Renata had explained that since my name was on the deed and I had proof of sole financial contribution, combined with the fraud documentation, we had a strong position on the property. Wednesday, I called our insurance broker and began separating our policies. Car insurance first. I removed Stacy's vehicle from our joint policy. Renata had warned me to document the date and reason. I did. Thursday was the hard part. Thursday was the joint bank account. I didn't drain it. Renata had been explicit. Emptying a joint account can look like financial misconduct and hurt you in divorce proceedings. What I did was transfer my $3,000 monthly household contribution, the one I'd been faithfully depositing for 5 years, to my new account instead. Effective immediately. That meant the joint account now had what was already in it, about $340, and nothing incoming. The clock had started. By Thursday evening, I was sitting in our living room when Stacy came home from what she said was a workout class. She smelled like Quincy's cologne, a scent I now recognized from Calvin's surveillance photographs, in which Quincy's jacket had been visible. She didn't know I knew what that smell was. She sat on the couch and kicked her shoes off and said, "Baby, what are we doing for dinner?" "I'm starving." I said, "I was thinking I'd cook." She looked mildly surprised. "I didn't cook often." "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "Salmon. The way you like it." She smiled. That beautiful, practiced smile. "You're so good to me, William." I went into the kitchen. I turned on some music, Anthony Hamilton, because the melancholy felt appropriate, and I cooked. Salmon with lemon and capers. Roasted asparagus. Garlic rice. A glass of Riesling for her. Sparkling water for me, because I wanted to stay completely clear. We sat down to eat. She talked about a show she'd been watching. She talked about her friend Tanya's new boyfriend, and how Tanya was glowing. She talked about wanting to redecorate the guest bedroom. I listened. I ate my salmon. I looked at this woman who had dismantled 5 years of my life piece by piece with a smile on her face, and I thought about something my mother always said. The truth doesn't need your permission to exist. "This is so good, baby," Stacy said, pointing her fork at her plate. "I'm glad," I said. After dinner, I cleaned up. She went upstairs to watch TV. I stood at the kitchen sink with my hands in warm, soapy water, and I let myself feel everything for exactly 10 minutes. The grief, the betrayal, the wasted years, the wasted love. 10 minutes exactly. Then I dried my hands, and I was done. Friday morning, before she was awake, I left the house at 6 a.m. and met Renata at her office on Peachtree Road. I signed the divorce filing documents. The petition cited irreconcilable differences. Renata advised we hold the fraud and infidelity evidence in reserve as leverage rather than lead with it. "She won't know what's coming," Renata said. "And when she realizes the accounts are empty and the filing is done, she's going to panic and potentially make mistakes. Let her." At 9:14 a.m. that Friday morning, Stacy Washington Ellis was served divorce papers at our front door by a process server named Douglas. I was at work when it happened. At 9:17 a.m., my phone rang. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "What is this?" Stacy's voice was tight, compressed, like she was trying to hold herself together through pure force. In 5 years, I'd never heard her sound like that. It almost got to me. Almost. "What does it say?" I said. Calm. Measured. "William, what is this? Divorce papers? Is this a joke? Is this some kind of—" "It's not a joke." Silence. "Then, I want to talk to you. Right now? Come home." "I'm at work, Stacy." "I don't care." "William, you can't just— We need to talk. We are married. You do not do something like this without—" "Without what?" I said, and something in my tone must have changed, because she went quiet. "Without a conversation? Like the ones you've been having with Quincy?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. "What did you say?" she whispered. 14 months, Stacy. Savannah. The Holiday Inn on Northside Drive. The Venmo transfers. The second phone between the mattress and the headboard. I paused. "I've seen the messages. All of them." including the ones about the house. She didn't speak for 8 full seconds. I counted. When she came back, the voice was different. The softness was gone. The practiced, beautiful softness that had been her greatest weapon. What replaced it was something colder and more honest than anything she'd shown me in 5 years. You went through my things. You went through my life, I said. We're even. William, listen to me. My attorney's name is Renata Caldwell. All communication goes through her from this point. I'll be collecting some of my things from the house this weekend. You'll have the house until the proceedings conclude. I've already arranged to stay elsewhere. I'd made arrangements with Darnell, who had a spare room and zero tolerance for dramatic nonsense. You can't just. William, I have nowhere to go if we lose the house. You can't. You should have thought about that, I said, before you called me an ATM. Another silence. I let it breathe. Then she shifted. And this is the part that turned my stomach, even then. Even knowing everything. Even holding the proof. She shifted into the voice, soft, wounded, trembling. The voice that had moved me to give her anything for 5 years. Baby, I know I've made mistakes. I know things have been hard, and I haven't been the wife I should have been. But we have something real. You know we do. Don't throw this away over. Stacy. My voice was quiet. Stop. She stopped. Don't, I said. I know every note of that song. I've been dancing to it for 5 years. I'm done. I hung up. My hands were shaking when I put the phone face down on my desk. Darnell appeared in my office doorway 30 seconds later. He'd clearly been watching from the hall. He walked in, closed the door, and set a cup of coffee on my desk. How'd it go, he said. She tried the voice. He nodded slowly. Yeah, they always try the voice. I picked up the coffee. It didn't work. He smiled just slightly. No, I didn't think it would. Stacy called 6 more times that day. I didn't answer. She called Tamara. Tamara, God bless her, answered and said 3 sentences. He knows everything, Stacy. Talk to a lawyer. Don't call me again. Then she hung up. Stacy called my mother. This was her most calculated move, and it nearly worked. Claudette Ellis was a woman of deep faith and fierce love. She'd always given Stacy more grace than Stacy deserved, because Claudette believed in the institution of marriage and in the power of forgiveness. When Stacy called her crying and said, Ms. Claudette, please help me save my marriage, my mother called me. William, whatever has happened, have you prayed about this? Mama, I need to tell you everything. Tonight. Can I come by? She said yes. I went to my mother's house in College Park that evening, and I sat at the kitchen table where I'd done homework as a boy and where my father had once sat before he left, and I told Claudette Ellis everything. The ATM comment. Quincy. The Savannah trips. The messages about the house. Terrence Powell in Cincinnati. My mother sat very still through all of it. When I finished, her eyes were bright and her jaw was set. She called me today, Claudette said. I know. I told her I'd speak to you. A pause. I've spoken to you. She reached across and covered my hand with both of hers. I'm sorry I didn't see her for what she was sooner, baby. You saw it, Mama. I wasn't ready to listen. She squeezed my hand. Hard. You listen to Renata Caldwell. You protect yourself. And when it's all done, you come back to yourself. That's all I ask. That night, I slept in Darnell's guest room for the first time. It smelled like cedar and old books. I stared at the ceiling for a while. Then I slept better than I had in 5 years. Stacy didn't disappear quietly. I never expected her to. A woman who had spent 14 months planning a financial exit strategy wasn't going to fold the moment I showed my hand. Within 4 days of being served, she'd retained an attorney of her own, a man named Gordon Ashby who had a reputation for aggressive tactics in high-asset divorce cases. Renata received Gordon Ashby's initial correspondence on a Monday. She called me. He's going after the house as primary marital asset. He's also claiming emotional abandonment and alleging that your abrupt cessation of deposits to the joint account constitutes financial abuse. Financial abuse, I repeated. It's a tactic. He's trying to reframe the narrative before we introduce our evidence. Renata was unruffled. But here's the thing, William, our evidence is strong, and the timing documentation is airtight. Your paycheck rerouting happened after the filing date. The joint account cessation happened the morning of the filing, not before. Legally, you are clean. What about the affair evidence? I want to use it as leverage during mediation rather than a courtroom spectacle. If Gordon Ashby thinks we'll expose his client in open court with photographs and message documentation, he'll push her towards settlement. Will she settle? A pause. She'll try to negotiate. She's going to want something she can walk away with. What does she deserve? Renata was quiet for a moment. Under Georgia law, even with the fraud evidence, she may be entitled to some marital asset consideration. But we can minimize it significantly. Here's what I want to do. While Renata strategized, something unexpected happened on the other side of the board. Quincy Lamar Briggs called me. I was sitting in Darnell's kitchen on a Wednesday evening when an unknown number showed up. I almost didn't answer. Something told me to. William Ellis? The voice was lower than I'd expected. Careful. Who is this? My name is Quincy Briggs. I think you know who I am. I set down my fork. I know exactly who you are. I need you to understand something, he said. I didn't know she was married when we first met. By the time I knew it was, he stopped. I'm not calling to make excuses. I'm calling because she told me some things about you, about the money, about what she had planned, and another stop. I didn't sign up for fraud, man. I'm not built like that. Then why are you calling me? Because if she's pulling this divorce play to get money out of you using me as part of her story, I want no part of it. I'll talk to your lawyer. I'll give a statement. Whatever you need. I cannot fully describe what it felt like to receive that call. It was not vindication, or maybe it was, but it was the hollow kind, the kind where being right doesn't actually feel good. What did she tell you about her plan? I asked. What Quincy described in the next 20 minutes was a level of premeditation I had not fully grasped. Stacy had told him, approximately 8 months into their relationship, that she was going to time the exit for maximum financial leverage. She'd been tracking my salary increases. She knew about my savings account, including one I'd thought was private, because she'd seen a bank statement I'd left on the desk years ago and memorized the account number. She'd been monitoring our home's Zillow estimate. She'd told Quincy she expected to walk away with no less than $200,000 from the divorce. She said that number specifically? More than once, Quincy said. I thought she was talking big. I didn't think she was actually running numbers. She was running numbers, I said. She's been running numbers since before she married me. Quincy gave a statement to Renata's office 2 days later. He was cooperative, detailed, and visibly ashamed. Renata called him a devastating witness, in the most professional tone I'd ever heard. Meanwhile, Stacy's world was crumbling in ways she hadn't anticipated. With no deposits coming into the joint account, she had approximately $340 and a credit card at $7,400 of its $8,000 limit. The $600 remaining credit was not enough to sustain the life she'd been living. Her salon appointment came and went. The spa membership auto-charged and bounced. Her infinity note was due, and since I'd separated the insurance, she got a letter informing her she was now the sole responsible party on her vehicle loan. Tanya, her closest friend, the one who'd cackled on the other side of that door, apparently did the math quickly and got considerably less available. Brianna, the one with the high-pitched squeal, reached out to Tamara through Instagram trying to get information and was blocked immediately. Stacy was alone with Gordon Ashby in a rapidly closing financial window. The mediation date was set for 6 weeks out. I spent those 6 weeks doing something I hadn't done in years, taking care of myself. I ran in the mornings. I ate real meals. I started going back to my barber, Kendrick at True Cuts on Flat Shoals, every 2 weeks. I called old friends I drifted from during the marriage. I had dinner with my mother twice a week. I was becoming myself again. I hadn't realized how much of me I'd lost. The mediation session was held on a Thursday at 9 a.m. in a conference room in Midtown Atlanta, on the 14th floor of a building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Peachtree Street. Gordon Ashby was a heavy-set man in an expensive suit who entered the room the way trial lawyers enter courtrooms, projecting authority that he hoped would establish dominance before a single word was said. He had silver at his temples and the kind of deliberate handsomeness that men cultivate as a professional weapon. Stacy came in after him. It was the first time I'd seen her since the Thursday dinner I'd cooked for her. She looked like she hadn't slept well in weeks, which was probably true. She was still put together, hair done, makeup perfect, a fitted black blazer. She was performing composure. I recognized the performance because I'd lived with it for 5 years. She looked at me when she sat down. I looked back. I did not look away first. The mediator was a retired judge named Harriet Odom, 60s, silver locks, zero tolerance for posturing. She laid out the ground rules in a voice that made clear she'd overseen every flavor of marital implosion imaginable and was not interested in theater. Gordon Ashby opened by claiming the house, valued at current Zillow estimate of $387,000, with approximately $290,000 in equity given the mortgage balance, was a marital asset to which Stacy was entitled to 50%. Renata Caldwell let him finish. Then she opened her portfolio. "We'd like to present documentation," Renata said pleasantly, regarding the financial contributions to the marriage over the 5-year period. She laid out the full accounting. Every mortgage payment, every utility, every car note, every grocery bill, every salon appointment, every spa membership. Total sole financial contribution by William Dewayne Ellis over 5 years, approximately $287,000 in household expenses. Stacy's financial contribution, 0. She then presented the evidence of the Venmo transfers to Quincy, totaling approximately $9,800 siphoned from the joint account. She presented the hotel receipts. She presented Quincy Briggs's signed statement. She presented the message screenshots from the second phone, including the conversation about timing the divorce for maximum financial extraction. The room was very quiet. Gordon Ashby was looking at his client. Stacy was looking at the table. "Mrs. Ellis," Judge Odom said, "do you wish to take a brief recess?" "Yes," Stacy said. Her voice was almost inaudible. In the hallway during the recess, I stood at the window and looked at Atlanta sprawled below me. The city I'd grown up in, built myself in, been taken apart in. Darnell had taken the day off to be in the building. He stood next to me without speaking. We just looked out the window together. When mediation resumed, Gordon Ashby's entire posture had changed. They were offering to waive any claim to the house in exchange for a single settlement payment and no criminal referral for the financial fraud. Renata Caldwell countered. What we ultimately agreed to, after 3 hours of back and forth, Stacy received $8,000. Her half of the remaining credit card balance paid off, essentially zeroing her debt, and walked away from the house, the savings, and any future claims. In exchange, I did not pursue a fraud complaint with the DA's office. She also had 30 days to vacate the property. Gordon Ashby did not look at his client when he signed. Stacy looked at me one more time across the conference table after Harriet Odom had concluded the session. I don't know what she was looking for. Anger, maybe. Grief. Something she could use. I gave her nothing. Not cruelty. Just nothing. Because she had taken enough from me already. The 30 days passed. I had a locksmith rekey the house on day 31. I stood in the doorway on a Saturday morning and walked through every room of the home I had built with my salary and my sacrifice, and I took stock. She'd taken some things. A few pieces of furniture, some decorative items, the good KitchenAid mixer. She'd left others, the bedroom set we'd shared, the dining table, the bookshelves. She'd left the wedding photo that had been on the mantle. I stood in front of it for a long time. The two of us on that October day in 2019 in front of the ceremony arch, Stacy in white, me in my navy suit, both of us mid-laugh at something the photographer had said. We looked happy. We looked real. Maybe it was real, for exactly as long as it was useful to her. I put the photo face down. I'd decide later what to do with it. I spent that first weekend back in the house, just existing in it differently. I rearranged the living room. I bought new bedding. I called Tamara and told her it was done. She drove over with my niece Amani, who was 6 years old, and spent the afternoon explaining the plot of a cartoon to me with intense seriousness while I cooked dinner. My sister sat at the kitchen counter and watched me cook and didn't say, "I told you so," even once. That meant more than she'll ever know. My mother came for Sunday dinner. She brought her cornbread and her sweet potato pie, and she prayed over the table the way she always had, hands clasped, eyes closed, voice low and fervent. And in the middle of her prayer she said, "And Lord, restore unto my son everything that was taken from him. Everything the enemy stole, restore it, in ways he can't imagine yet." I couldn't speak for a moment after the amen. Darnell came over with his girlfriend, a pediatric nurse named Sonia who had gentle eyes and the kind of steady energy that made rooms feel settled. They brought a bottle of scotch, and we sat on the back porch until midnight. Darnell raised his glass and said, "To men who figure it out before it's completely too late." I raised mine. "To men who don't go through it alone," I added. And I meant it. I thought about Terrence Powell up in Cincinnati. The man who'd been through this before me, who'd tried to warn the world in the way that people who've been burned try to warn anyone who'll listen, by living quietly and hoping someone somewhere connects the dots. I thought about sending him a message through Tamara. Just 2 words, she's gone. I wrote it. I didn't send it. Some things you just keep. The financial damage assessment, when I finally sat with Darnell and a spreadsheet on a quiet Tuesday night. Over 5 years, I had spent an estimated $287,000 in household expenses covering Stacy's entire existence, plus the $9,800 drained via Quincy transfers, plus the $1,400 for Calvin Reese, plus Renata's fees, which came to approximately $6,800, reasonable for the outcome we achieved. Total cost of loving Stacy Washington Ellis, somewhere around $305,000. What did I have left? The house, $290,000 in equity. My savings account, which she had never found because I'd opened a separate one in 2023 when things had started feeling off, on instinct, somewhere in my gut that I'd refused to listen to consciously. That account had $31,000 in it. My 401k, which was untouched and healthy. My salary, now rerouted entirely to accounts she had no access to. I was not destroyed. I was, financially speaking, genuinely okay. That might be the most important sentence in this entire story. I survived it. Not just emotionally. Materially. She had taken so much, and she had not taken everything. Some part of me, the part my mother had forged in that small house in College Park, had protected the core. Had always, quietly, kept something in reserve. There was one more thing I had to do. One conversation I'd been putting off. I had not spoken to Stacy. Not once, since the phone call the day she was served. Everything since had gone through lawyers. But 3 weeks after the mediation, I received a text from an unknown number that I recognized as the one she used when her primary phone died. It said, "I know you hate me. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did." I know. I stared at that text for a long time. I didn't hate her. That was the truth. Hate is a fire, and I was done burning my own energy on her. What I felt was closer to pity. The kind that comes when you see what someone has chosen to be and understand that they have to live inside that choice. I typed back one sentence. "Take care of yourself, Stacy." Then I blocked the number. It's been 9 months. 9 months since I stood in that hallway holding 2 chicken sandwiches and heard the truth about who I was to the woman I'd built my life around. 9 months of rebuilding, slowly and deliberately. The way you rebuild anything that was worth having in the first place. I want to tell you who I am now. The house no longer feels haunted. I repainted the bedroom a deep slate gray, and I bought a platform bed with a solid walnut frame from a furniture maker in Avondale Estates named Gerald, who hand-delivered it on a Saturday and spent 20 minutes telling me about the woods grain. I had my mother's favorite photo, the one of the 2 of us at Tamara's college graduation, printed and framed, and it sits on the nightstand. I started running. Not as therapy or discipline, just as a thing I do in the mornings before the world wakes up, pounding out miles through the streets of Decatur in the early light, headphones in, listening to whatever I feel like listening to. Sometimes gospel, sometimes old hip-hop, sometimes nothing at all. I went back to therapy, something I'd suggested to Stacy but never done myself. My therapist's name is Dr. Priscilla Wayans, a black woman in her late 40s who runs a practice in Kirkwood, and who spent the first 4 sessions listening and the 5th session saying, very quietly, "William, I want to ask you something. Do you know that what happened to you is not a reflection of your value?" I sat with that question. I know the answer now. I do. Work has been good. Darnell and I got joint approval on a proposal we'd been developing for a new logistics framework, something that could save the company significant costs and might, if the brass take it further, become a publishable methodology. We had lunch to celebrate at a Brazilian steakhouse in Midtown where they bring the meat on swords, and we ate until we couldn't move, and Darnell said, "Look at you, man. You look different." "How?" I asked. "Like yourself," he said. "Tamara's daughter Imani calls me Uncle Mark and demands that I come to every school event with the same intensity she brings to explaining cartoons. I don't miss a single one." I sat in a tiny kindergarten chair at her school's family day last month, knees folded up to my chest, watching her show me her drawings, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Something uncomplicated. My mother's prayer has been on my mind. Restore unto him everything that was taken, in ways he can't imagine yet. I'm starting to imagine. I met someone. I'm going to be careful about how I say this because it's early, and I've learned hard lessons about projecting what I want onto people before I actually know them. But her name is Celeste Monroe. She's 32, a landscape architect who works on commercial green space projects across the metro area. We met at a neighborhood association meeting in Decatur, the kind of meeting I'd never gone to while I was married because Stacy found them boring. Celeste has her own apartment, her own car, her own savings, her own opinions, and her own life. When we had our second dinner together and I offered to pay, she split it evenly without drama and said, "We can take turns." A small thing, a normal thing. I almost laughed at myself for how much it meant. I haven't told her the whole story yet. She knows I'm recently divorced. She knows it was bad. She doesn't press. When I'm ready, I'll tell her, not as baggage, but as context, as the history that shaped the man sitting across from her and taught him, at significant cost, what he actually deserves. I think about the ATM comment sometimes, not with pain anymore, more with clarity, because in a way, it was the most honest thing Stacy ever said to me, and hearing it, accidentally, from outside a door I almost knocked on, was the mercy that saved my life. Because if she'd said it about me, she was also saying something about herself. She had looked at a man who drove home on his lunch break to bring her lunch, who paid every bill with pride, who gave her 5 years of his salary and his trust and his devotion, and she had seen a machine. That's not who I am. I know that now in a way I couldn't have known it before. Here's what I want to say to every man or woman who's reading this and recognizing their own story in mine. The moment you hear the truth, however it comes to you, whatever form it takes, listen. Don't explain it away. Don't negotiate with it. Don't ask for 5 more years of proof. Listen. Dewayne Ellis said it first, and she was right. A person who can't protect their peace can't protect anything else. Protect your peace. The accounts are closed. The house is mine. The life that was taken from me is being rebuilt, quietly, piece by piece, on a foundation that no one can touch this time because I know now, with absolute, hard-won, unshakable certainty, exactly what it's worth. And I'll never undersell it again. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, hit like, drop a comment below. I see every single one. And if you know someone who's been carrying someone who doesn't deserve them, share this story. Sometimes the truth finds us through other people's courage to tell it. I'll see you in the next one.